anything. No, nobody said anything. If there was a formal, would you call it a disclosure? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It looked like a public notice to me when I saw it, but if it was a disclosure, if that was...
This was voted on.
I'm not talking about what the refi was. I'm talking about that on April 23rd, there was a disclosure given from this office that someone at Newsday picked up on and wrote an article on, and nobody in this office thought it was important enough to speak about at a budget meeting in front of their trustees. That's my point. I don't even need an answer.
Excuse me, no.
Yes.
But at the budget workshop, we asked Maria where we stood on the bond, the refinancing. The U.S. Alfred asked the question, and she said we were working on it and we were moving forward.
Work on it and moving forward and actually having to do what you have to do,
Well,
whether
but
it's
it's
$3
not in
or
our hands right now.
$3,000.
It's with bond counsel right now. It's going through.
On April 23rd, there was a conclusion, and it was written and given, and that is what Newsday. So you can keep telling yourself that you were working on it, but there
we
was
were working on it. The bond counsel.
You can keep saying that the bond counsel was working on it, but by April 23rd, he had an answer for you. Maybe without a number, but he had an answer for you, and your meeting was April 20.
But we, April 23rd.
25th.
But April 23rd was on.
No, it wasn't.
28th.
No, it wasn't.
Wrong date down. I'm sorry, I wrote the wrong date down there. I'm sorry.
All right.
It was the 23rd.
Let's get back to where we're supposed to be. We're doing the tax, George, wait a minute. We're doing the tax cap override. And I'll take a motion. Is it about that?
Yeah, absolutely about that.
Okay. Say, stand up, give your name, come up.
Joe Russo, 3 Cat Hollow. The question is, if Locust Valley School District with an $80 million budget doesn't have to go out in advance to say they want to override the cap, why is the village of Bayville with a $5 million budget doing that now?
Because it's a tool that's out there, and I don't trust the state.
So why didn't Locust Valley take advantage of that?
Ask them. Go
Well,
over
no,
there
no,
tomorrow.
no. The
Ask
question is,
them.
what's the purpose of the tool if we're looking at a budget that is well under, not only well under the cap, but lower than last year's budget? Why are we looking to use that tool?
Because under advice at a meeting that was held with a state senator to executive committee of VOA, Nassau County Village Officials Association, it was advised to take precaution, get through this year, and then next year, if he thinks it's going to all pretty much lose importance that it has right now.
Well, the law's not going to change.
No, I think what
I mean, I'm
protects
curious about the loss of, for 1 second, Kathy. I'm curious about the loss of that issue next year. Do we expect the law to change next year? Is that what you're saying? Because the law is no expiration date yet on that law. But my real question is, then, how many villages have gone out and actually taken that precaution?
I don't have that number.
Okay, so then why are we, I mean, is there another, there has to be a reason for why we're taking that precaution. That's really my question. Is why are we taking that precaution if we know already that we don't need it?
We did the same thing last year, exactly the same way.
I think 90% of the villages last year.
I think the reason is,
It's only a tool.
I understand that.
We didn't do it last year.
I understand. Let Kathy answer this question first for a second, please.
my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we use certain numbers that have been given to us by the state when we calculate certain things within the budget line. Yes, those numbers, we can adopt this budget, which we are going to do, and we are under the cap. But if the state changes the numbers that we used in our calculations to present this budget, then numbers that we have in the budget lines may be inaccurate based on a calculation that we use, using a number that the state supplied us with, which the state can change.
Right, but hasn't the state already provided their finalized number? And if they haven't, when do they expect the state, when do you expect the state to provide
I'm
that
just saying,
number?
that's just
So
my...
Joe, what's the downside? Nothing's going to change. It's going to stay at the 2%. What's the downside?
The downside is really the question.
We're doing this as an insurance. If the state does change something, we don't get penalized going forward. It's just a state.
Well, there's no-
Listen, if nothing happens, state doesn't change anything. We're under the cap. We're not changing anything. What's the downside? Tell me.
the downside is that it gives you an ability to exceed the cap without any more additional input.
But the tentative budget is gonna be voted
But
on.
if we're not doing that, then there's no reason to do the
We're not doing
resolution.
that, but it's nice that we have insurance. This is what we do.
This isn't insurance. This is not, I'm sorry, Alice, it's not insurance. This is, you're taking a step to exceed the law that's on the books, which is what the state gave you the option to do.
In case something changes, the
In
state
case-
does its whole time.
But the question is still answers. If the final cap number from the state has been provided, then there's no reason to do the insurance. You're not gonna buy insurance after you've had your accident. You don't buy insurance and say, please cover me, okay? You buy it beforehand. In this particular case, if you know the answer to your question, that you're not gonna exceed the cap, and you know what the state numbers are, there's no reason to get insurance. That's the issue on the table. So the question goes back to, do we have an answer from the state as to what our final numbers are? Yes or no? That's a question. Well, okay, but do we know the answer?
Joe, I'm not sure there's numbers.
Do we have an answer from the state on what the number is? That's a question.
People at the state don't know themselves. The people from Village Officials Association have all kinds of numbers going out there. And so there's an unknown. And if it changes, and you're in danger, why would you want to not have something that costs us nothing?
Well, it doesn't cost us nothing. It makes it easier for the village, as the state has put the requirement on the villages to keep to the 2% cap. It makes it easier for you to exceed it. The whole goal is that, the goal that...
Right. Yeah, but let me ask, okay, Joe, let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
The budget, the tentative budget that's going to be adopted tonight doesn't exceed it, we feel.
The final budget tonight, not the tentative budget, right?
That's the same thing. That's the same thing. In fact,
The budget you approve tonight will be the budget.
will be the budget. And
Right.
and then that's the tentative budget that we had the hearing on last time. It didn't change. We had a workshop the other night just to check on
Right,
all
which is
this.
fantastic, and I would have loved to have been there. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. But that's great, that we've managed to stay that. The question still goes back to, does the state have a number for us that we measure that 2% against? Which is not 2%, it's just that's a nice number, but there's all calculations that go into the creation of that 2%. Do we have that number today? Yes or no? I believe you do, because in order for the state, is that correct, do we? Maria? Do we have that number today?
It's not one number, it's
It's-
within calculations.
It's based on the proposed levy,
Right, it's
which
based
is
on-
filed before you adopt the budget.
Oh, can Mr. Chris can say that again, so we can hear, please.
Oh, it's based on the proposed levy, which you file before you adopt the budget.
Right, and have we filed?
So then the
proposed
next
budget?
year you report what you actually levy.
Right.
And the state can change what, they can add things to your levy based on their calculations.
But do we have, so again,
We have the number that we submitted to the state,
you have the number that you submitted to the state.
right,
Has the state
which
come
is
back?
based on the tentative budget, which will be adopted tonight. That's the
So
final
then they-
budget,
So then,
which is under the cap.
which is under the cap. So
Right,
then
as
there's
far
no-
as we know, as our calculation.
So there's no reason to put this resolution out there.
The only reason would be if the state comes back and says, you have to include this in your levy, and now you're over the cap.
Okay, and should you do that, then what's your next step? What's the village's next step?
Should we override the cap?
Well, you've overridden the cap, but that's what
No,
this
they
is.
haven't voted yet.
Well, if they do that, that's what this
Yes,
would be.
right.
They'd override
That's
the cap.
it. Then we adopt the budget, and our levy is not obligated to change. We can't change the levy after the budget's been adopted. So we can't exceed the cap once you adopt the budget.
What's the purpose of the
Right, which would force you to go back to the budget and find some area in the budget to save some money. Yes or no?
Yes.
No, we're not over the cap.
But
Joe,
again,
let-
no.
Let me
Again,
finish.
you're saying, I did let him finish. We're not over the cap. You adopt the budget tonight, everything looks good. The state looks at your numbers and says everything is fine. There's no reason to adopt the 2% override. If the village,
But
the
they don't
state,
give us that
if
lead
this-
time. They come in after the fact and say, you levy too much taxes,
right, and then
and now
they-
you're in violation.
But in order to correct the violation, you go back to the budget and you take some money out of the budget.
No, that's next year, you would set aside a reserve to offset the
From this year's
violation.
budget to go to next year to help reduce that.
To save that money. So therefore, next year you would save the money that you would need. Basically, then you're overriding the cap is preventing you from spending money next year.
I don't,
Yes?
No, that would only result if there was a, you went over the cap.
Understood that.
That's what I just said. You said no, and then you said only if we went over the cap. So overriding the cap is preventing you from spending that reserve money next year, should you have to spend it.
We don't have the reserve money. It would have to be set aside if you exceed the cap.
Next year, if you, so going over the cap now prevents you,
We're not going over the cap.
but you don't know that, right?
We
'Cause
do
you're
know that based on the budget,
Then
the
there's
tentative budget.
there's no reason to adopt this resolution.
yeah. All
Adopt
right,
this
Joe.
law.
I
Joe,
just said the reason why.
Joe, thank you. Thank you.
Dang, I'm so confused. I don't know, maybe somebody else is.
And it's about the budget cap?
What else? That's what we're talking about, right? I have two questions pertaining to that. The first is, are there any negotiations that take place this year with the village employees as far as the unions or anyone else? As far as wages, fringe benefits?
You just say that they're all on their arm.
There are,
There are.
and that's all we can say.
Okay, well, as a former union negotiator for the Illinois Pilots Association, I'll tell you that if you override the cap, and I know that there's more money available out there than what you would have if you didn't override the cap, you make it a terrible mistake.
Wait, George, we're not overriding the cap.
No, but you're authorizing the cap to be
I
overridden,
think
all
what
right?
George is saying is that the union will look at that.
Once the levy is set,
He's saying on the union.
No, I'm not talking about the levy. If you authorize the village to override the cap, okay, which by the way, is probably this year less than 2%, if my calculation.
we're not gonna override the cap.
But if you,
But this is just a technicality.
that's what you're saying, but it's not. From the viewpoint of the negotiator, if you know that there's more money available to you out there that's not in the present budget, but the village is voting to override that cap, so in fact, there could be more money out there. You're gonna hold your feet to the fire for a longer period of time. It's gonna cost the village more for wages and benefits. All right, you can shake your head no, but if go read a few books on it, you're wrong. The second thing is, I brought up 2 months ago about the health insurance of this village.
Now you're up to traffic.
No, it's not, it's part of this budget. It's $500,000 for this budget, all right? I'd like to know, Al told me he would look into it. I'd like to know what's been looked into, particularly for those people who are eligible for Medicare.
Okay.
It's a $118,000 item.
George,
Okay? I think we're entitled to know why, has that been included in the budget? Has there been any reduction? Has the issue been looked at? Has it been resolved? I'd like to know. My money.
I don't have the paper right here, but I asked you last time, are you sure you didn't vote for that? You voted for that. It's in the minute book, and I have a copy. It's at home.
Really?
Just like you were on the board and everything else.
First of all, it's irrelevant. We weren't fiscally distressed.
You're up here,
When
giving
I
us
was
a hard time.
when I was a trustee.
Answer the question.
1982, 30 years ago.
Yeah, you voted.
Okay, the village was not fiscally distressed then. The people paid $14 a foot for a slip in the marina, okay? They're paying $80 a foot today. So we use that as an example, okay? Times are different. It's irrelevant, it's ridiculous. There's no comparison.
All right, thank you.
No, don't say that. I'm not finished yet, because I would like to know whether or not, when I vote, when you said I voted for something that I don't recall voting for what?
Well, I'll send
Tell me,
you.
what did you vote for?
There was a copy, there was a resolution to provide health care to board members. If they
Board member.
I will send you a copy of it.
I would like that. Yeah, I always hear this, I'm gonna get it. I was a board member, I never had health benefit.
You had to ask for them, it's right in the minutes of the bill.
Not so. I never, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're making it up, all right? But I would like to know if anybody looked into the fact about the health care benefits of people who qualify, otherwise who qualify for Medicaid. It's $118,000 a year that it's costing this building. And I'd like to know how you think you're gonna look into it.
We are, I'm still looking into it. I'm not in favor of it either, to be honest with you, but
I mean, 2 months, and now we're about to go another year into it. That's the point that I'm making. It is related to the budget, and it is related to the capital, because it would be $118,000 less in the budget if we did it that way. Thank you.
For nothing, all right. I'll take a motion to adopt this bill.
I'll make a motion, we adopt Bill 2014-1 to allow it to override the 2% tax cap.
Full board?
Trustee Pinkerton?
No.
Trustee Lapoli?
Yes.
Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Belkacki?
Yes.
Trustee Stitt?
Yes.
Mayor Watson?
Mr. Gross?
Before they start their register, that meeting again is May 5th, 7 to 9, Crescent Beach Park.
7 to 9?
Yep. Thank you.
Wait, how many of those do you have? Okay, and you're gonna rotate through and stuff like that? You didn't? Oh, yeah. Joe? Yeah, what? You do the old thing with let us see it, and then we'll show the.
Notice is hereby given that the village of Bayville will hold a site time review hearing on Monday, April 28th, 2014, at 8:15 a.m. at Bayville Village Hall, 31st School Street, Bayville, New York. The purpose of said hearing is to review and revise the previously approved site plan for 33 Bayville Avenue, description as follows. Section 29, Block 82, Lot 2, Section 29, Block 3, Lot 123, Section 29, Block B12, Lot 1, Section 29, Block 82, Lot 14. All interested parties will have the opportunity to be heard at that time by order of the Board of Trustees and their affidavits of publication and posting for this hearing.
Thank you. State your name, sir.
Good evening, Board, good evening, Mayor. Gregory Andrea, Architects, 4 Birch Street, Mississauga, New York. So we all know what we're here for, looking at the old Tides location.
Greg, can I just stop you for 1 second? Yeah. This is about the Steve's Pier 1 property, the spa project. That is.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, Steve's Pier, I didn't mean to correct you, I didn't hear what you said.
No, I said.
I just wanted to, this is the project, and it's no secret that the project stalled for some time. There is now a new partnership formed, and the basic structure that you see on the property, according to the reports from the partners, is that, and from Mr. Andrew, that it's basically the same footprint with some minor little tweaks to it, and a new look for the building that's less Mediterranean. So I'm still in the presentation. It's a less of a Mediterranean look and more of something that you might see out in the Hamptons. So the village board does the site plan, and so they have to come back to us. This project is previously approved. We're not here to dig a hole in the ground and work our way up. The same building, basically, that was approved, whatever day it was approved, is the same approval. What we're here to do is to review it and to make to approve some changes, minor changes, to an already approved plan. So I can't let this go all over the place, as things will sometimes. We're here for Mr. Andrea and the owners to make any input they want to make for us, and give us a flavor of what we can expect there, and that's all. Okay, so I'm sorry.
So what we want to do is more of a regional historic building, seaside building, Stanford-like type structure that keeps in with the environment, seaside like spas and things that would be from Newport to Rhode Island, Hamptons, That's where we moved it to a historic regional building, shingle style. That's a shingle style. Well, the only thing we really did is we removed that tower that was out in the corner here. So we really, we decreased the actual envelope.
When you say we did, means in the drawings.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything yet.
No, right, the plan is to take that tower off that was down in the corner and to push back the wall over this corner, so we reduced.
Greg, can you show us what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm going to show you on a different plan. Here's the first floor plan. In this area right here was a tower, you can see in the rendering that's there now. And so we took that off, and this wall here came back a little bit, just so we could get a more aligned facade. And pretty much, you know, we redid the interior, where the stairs are, and how that relates to the fireplace in the middle. There's some adjustments there. But generally, the footprint has decreased because of that. But
That first picture was of the basement? Or
yeah, the first one is, here's the basement.
Okay, all right.
So that really doesn't show you that much. The first floor is pretty much stayed the same with the restaurant, grand ballroom, bar, reception entry. That all stayed the same. For the most part. Second